And welcome back, everybody. Here we are in Scottsdale, Arizona. Temperature here is roughly 84 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's just a bit warm for my taste, at least. And as you can see, not a cloud in the sky. And why don't we go somewhere more pleasant, like Monterey Bay in California? The I double checked the routing on the flight aware, which ironically links up with the flight plan that is preferred. That is the preferred flight plan in SimBrief for those of you that utilize SimBrief. And like I said, ironically, they're both the same. So I wonder where SimBrief gets their information. Pretty sure that we know the answer to that question. So let's simply utilize the flight plan that I jotted down from FlightAware as a citation, not a longitude, but a citation 560. It flew from Scottsdale to Monterey Bay, and that is the flight plan that I'm going to be punching into the Garmin G5000 flight computer. For those of you that have never seen me do that, and go through the aircraft systems and make sure everything is up and running as it should, run through the checklist properly, and then we'll be underway, and we should be able to get out of here within 20 minutes. We should be able to wheels up. So without further ado, let's hop in the jet and get going. There we go. Oh, all right. Gotta go this way. And when we land in Monterey, I'll show you, for those of you that want to know, if you're outside of this particular aircraft, um, and you want to close the door after you're done with utilizing it, there is a way to do that from the outside. So let's get things up and going here. First thing that I do is I get rid of the yokes because we need to see what's going on. Let's see. Well, the first officer's yoke, it can stay where it is. That's fine. Okay, so step number one, standby power test. Hold that in the test position for 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Standby power. Put that on. Turn on both batteries. And the Garmin Avionics suite boots up. And it begins to do its alignment so it knows where we are in the world and all that fun stuff. All right. As you may remember from previous episodes, the navigation and beacon lights, those are controlled automatically by the G5000, but in flight I'll show you where you can change that. They do come on automatically, and it's one less thing that you have to think about. Okay, everything is still in the middle of aligning, so what we're going to do is we're going to go and turn on the APU because it's hot in here. And it's only, as a person who used to live in Phoenix, it's only going to get hotter for the next several months. Although 84 degrees for late April, that's not bad. All right, let's go ahead and do our weight and fuel. Payload, 8 passengers on board. Got that. No cargo because corporate people that fly corporate, we're just going to assume that they have their carry-ons,
Pause
and
system test.
that's about all they
Okay.
need because who knows, they may be going there for just a meeting, flying back, or something like that. So we'll leave that out of it. The 185 pounds per individual passenger, that includes, in the airline industry at least, uh, that used to include, I had to look at the manual, but that used to include, it depends on the airline, but it's pretty much across the board, that used to include the average passenger's weight and their carry-on along with a checked bag, and the average came out to 185 pounds in the wintertime. I think they upped it to 195 or 200. So anyway, weight and fuel with regard to payload, good. Taxi. We'll just want to simply click on FLB sync because I did increase the fuel just before beginning this episode, and that is correct. Landing, we're obviously not ready for that yet. We'll be talking about that, this little screen, a little later. Alright, now comes the fun part, and that's entering the flight plan. So we're going to type in our origin for Scottsdale Kilo, Sierra, Delta Lima. There we go. And hit the enter key on the bottom right. Now add en route waypoint. In the waypoint, do we have an actual SID? SID, standard instrument departure. We do. It's the ISO 8. Alright. Let's bring up the ISO 8. Where is the ISO 8 here? There we go, and just making sure it's the harbor transition. Yep, harbor transition. And we are going to be utilizing runway 21 due to the wind direction, even though the wind velocity is practically nothing. Alright, and if we look at the sequence on the right hand side, we got runway 21, Keynes, ISO, Colts, and Harbor. That is our exit point. For those of you that fly for JetBlue, as a good friend of mine does, they always refer to the very last navigational fix in a SID as the exit point. Even though a lot of us may call that a transition, he calls it an exit point, so we'll leave it as an exit point. All right. Preview. Yeah, we'd like to see that on the map, please. And we'll change the map back to, so we'll load that, enter the flight plan. And as you can see over on the PFD to my left, it is already set up for that. All right. The only thing that is missing are the corresponding altitudes per individual fix, and we'll be dealing with that here momentarily. But let's get the rest of the flight plan queued in. Alright, so after harbor, we got to go to Okako, which is Oscar, Kilo Alpha, Charlie, Oscar. There we go. Next is Lopes, Lima, Oscar, Papa Echo Sierra. There we go. Enter. One more. Oh, sorry. Two more. Next one. Alpha Victor Echo. That's a VOR. Oops. My bad there. There we go. Enter that. One more. And that's going to be Wiggle. Whiskey, India, Golf, Golf, Lima. There we go. And now we're going to enter our destination. And that is Monterey. So it's Kilo Mike Romeo Yankee. One of my favorite cities to go to with the family. Monterey, if you haven't been there, I highly recommend it. Especially in the summertime. Beautiful weather. And it's not hot on average. And we can get rid of that blank spot there. We'll be choosing our runway once we get a little farther down the road in flight. All right, that's in. And if you're wondering if I'm not utilizing ATC, it's simply because the ATC that comes with Microsoft Flight Sim 2024 is simply not nearly as good as it could be. That's just my opinion. Alright, origin, Scottsdale, runway 21. Yep, that is right. Weather. We'll simply load the METAR info. Temperature 30, which, like I said, which in Fahrenheit is about 84 degrees, so that's why we're getting out of here, just a little too hot. Alright, obviously not compared to what's coming, but let's go ahead and set in our altimeter here at 2983. Altimeter 729. A3, cross check that with the FOs. PFD 2983. Very good. Let's zoom that in just a little bit. That's a bit out it's a 1,000 nautical mile view, which shows half of the lower 48 and the majority of Mexico. We don't need to be zoomed out that much. Let's bring it in a little bit, makes it a little more easy to read. And a little more than that. A little more. There we go. That's better. Alright, let's just go over the weather information here real quick. Winds are 150, 3 knots. The 10 SM, that means 10 statute miles. Clear skies, CLR means, in the words clear, no clouds. 30 is the temperature in Celsius and or centigrade for those of you across the pond. N06, that means minus, that the dew point is 6 below 0 and or minus 6. Altitude 29.83, we just went over that, remarks, done. And we're good. Go back. And let's talk about the runway real quick. 8,251 feet of it is available. The elevation of the runway is 1,504, which, with regard to heat and the elevation and length of the runway, we'll be utilizing flaps too, but we're going to do that in the next step here in our takeoff configuration. Runway heading is 214 for this particular departure, this runway, so let's go ahead and dial that in up here. 214. This is something you always want to do, whether you're flying this kind of an airplane or if you're flying any other airplane with a autopilot. There we go. 214. And let's go ahead and dial in the the altitude, our cruising altitude, since we're not utilizing VATSIM. I will in the next flight. I hear that vPilot got an update and it's now compatible. Okay. All right. Pardon me. The real world flight, they flew at 38,000. So let's spin on 38. And remember, with the citation longitude here, if you want to go in increments of 100 feet, you right-click on the knob, and then you can dial it in increments of 100 feet. And then from now on, we're going to be in increments of 1,000, so I simply right-click it again, and it goes back to 1,000-foot increments. All right. Takeoff configuration. Flaps 1, like I said, let's do flaps 2, simply because of the heat and the fact that we do have a full flight with regard to passengers. Anti-ice will be off. Yeah, we definitely don't need it today. Not even close. Pressure reverser, so takeoff after 1, rolling takeoff. Nope, and we're not going to do a rolling takeoff. Takeoff data, which is our V-speeds. V1, 112, rotate at 115. V2, stage speed is 126. And our VFTO, which is what we need, the speed of which we need to make sure that the flaps are retracted, 185 knots. And we're going to accept those speeds. And those are in. The only reason, again, remember, with this Garmin G5000 avionics suite, the takeoff speeds will not go live, if you will, onto the speed ape until we reach the point at which we set the flaps. And the flaps go down to takeoff position after engine start, and then those 4 fields on the speed ape will automatically populate. All right. We are good to go with regard to the flight plan. And let's go on. Let's utilize. Well, this is what I do. I utilize the right display for things like checklists and important things of that nature. All right. Pre-flight, we did that. Zoom out just a little bit. We have to use this other knob here. Pre-flight. Oh. There you go. Sorry. Pre-flight is done. I guess we did that. APU, it is 6 miles per hour, not required. Dry motor, consider it. Okay, now remember this one rule. This is very, very, very important. Remember that if the wind, a wind sock available here within our visual field, looking for a wind sock. No. What you want to do, especially with turbines like this, jet engines, you want them to push you back, and or if your plane is in a pushback scenario, you want to make sure that the nose, that's funny, that Cessna over there has snow skis on it. Don't think you're going to be needing it anywhere around here. The one thing you want to make sure of in pushing back, you always want the marshaller to make sure that you're pushed back so that your nose is pointed into the wind, so you don't have a hot start. Because if it's a windy day, in this case, in the greater Phoenix Valley, Scottsdale, in this case, if it's hot and there's a wind, The hot air can simply push, and cold air really, but it can push your ignition as the turbine begins to spin and the fuel goes into the combustion chamber. The the hot air going out the back end of the engine can go right back into the engine, and that's a really bad thing. And you are not going to be flying that day, I can assure you. And it'll be a very, very expensive maintenance shop visit for that. All right, ATIS, and again, dry motor. We were an engine dry motor. I just brought that up because I saw engine dry motor. Consider it. Okay, we considered it, and we're going to be just fine. ATIS, we picked that up already. We plugged everything in. Cockpit control is on pilot. Engage, disengage. That's the first light of the day. Trims. 3. That is the typical amount of trim. Let's look at our takeoff data very quickly. That's what I thought. It doesn't give you a specific trim like it does in, like, let's say a 737 or any of the airliners that I fly. All right, we can actually do that because it's electric. And we'll set that to 3. All right, got it. Initialization is complete. V-speeds, those are set. Pressurization, verify set. Landing elevation, 209 feet. If you look under the pressurization, you'll see one number in magenta. It is 209, and that is correct. Fuel quantity, we have checked it, and it is it's going to be slightly off balance like it is now, but don't worry, there is a very easy way to balance it out down here, and we'll do that in flight. And that's simply because the APU is feeding off of the right tank. Alright, go to the next checklist. The parking brake is set with shocks are removed. Cabin door is closed. Passenger briefing, we're going to say that we already told them what they need to know with regard to safety, and there's a safety video for them to watch. Cabin divider secured and open. We don't have one. Seat belts, those signs are with regard to us up here on the flight deck. Those are good. We are secured. Passenger, their seatbelt sign is on. CAS check, we already did that. Alright, now we're down to engine start. And we do know how to start it. Yep. And I do know what to look for. Ops engine, yes. Basically that's rinse and repeat. Alright, this is before taxi, so let's go ahead and ask these nice people to push us back. Let's make sure we got everything down here set. Good, 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 good. Let's do one quick thing before we go further than this. Let's go into our pressure and temperature. Here we go. 70. Oh, okay, perfect. That's very, 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 very pleasant. Good. We're just going to look at a couple things real quick. Management. Yeah, we don't need those lights. Exterior lights. Yeah, again, it takes care of everything. 8x, normal. And let's go into synoptics. Flight controls, we will be doing that after we start engines. Alright, let's go ahead and ask for, you know what? Let's go ahead and do this. Let's just turn everybody on. And we are going to request a pushback here. I like this view a little better. Here comes the tug. Let's release the parking brake. Hopefully they push us in the right direction. If they don't, this airplane does a tight turn on the ground pretty well. Alright, we're going to have to turn it. Okay, let's see how far back they push us, because we need to go the other way. You can see you can see the N1 fans beginning to spin. Okay. Yeah, we have plenty of room to turn to our left. We'll wait for the tug to be clear. Alright. Parking brake set. We're going to start the engine on the right engine. Hold the start button for 1 second. It turns from barber pole and it's beginning to light off. We're watching the ITT for a hot start. There's the light off right there. Good. Very good. Let's close the cover and go to the left. Okay, into rotation. Looking good. And one rotation. There's the light off right there. Alright. Looking good. Let's go into that flight control page. Make sure everybody's up and running all the way to the left. Good. All the way to the right. Good. Neutral. Elevators all the way up. Good. Neutral. All the way down. Neutral. Rudder. All the way to the left. Neutral. All the way to the right. Neutral. Flash set to 2. And as you can see on the PFD, we have our V speeds now displayed. Make sure everybody else looks good. We obviously no longer need to burn fuel with the APU running. APU off. And that'll be reflected on that synoptic very soon. Anti-ice is not required pre-flight. Only thing really pending, technically checked, is the parking brake, and we'll release the brake. And that goes away. Everybody looks good. Double check our electrical system. Engines are running the engine and generators are running everything, which is good. 28 volts. And good. Hydraulics, everybody looks good. At the brief light, summary, and this is This is a very good page to look at. It just gives you a quick view of everything. Everything is good. And we're going to turn on the traffic. We're going to go back to the checklist. Alright, cockpit speakers as desired. Check flight controls, we just did that. Speed brakes, check retracted, which they are. Flaps, they are set for takeoff. Flight instruments and avionics, they are set. Attitude, heading, and air data displays, those are all aligned and no flags. Altimeters, we did confirm and compare 29.83, also on the standby as well. Eyes protection as required. Exterior lights as required for taxi. That would be the taxi light itself. The anti-collision light, that'll come on just before we line up with the runway. It's the same for the landing lights. Exterior lights are good. Parking brakes stowed. That right now. Every once in a while it automatically turns back on, and that's frustrating. Brakes, got nose wheel steering, it's obviously going to be there. And it does want us to test thrust reversers, and we'll be doing that here in just a moment. So let's go ahead and get rolling. Make sure nobody's in our way. Good. Something else that they're going to want to have us do on the checklist, and that is our auto throttle, which is on the back side of either throttle. We'll turn that on after we get through the end of this taxi checklist and before takeoff checklist. All right, let's roll. As I said, this aircraft turns on a dime. All right. Yeah, the aircraft in just about every aircraft that I've flown in 2024, they tend to require a little too much thrust to get rolling. But then once you get rolling, they act like it's a race car. So always keep that in mind, because the speed limit is less than 20 knots while taxiing, and I've got the engines all the way back to idle. And this is a hot day. Okay, well, relatively hot day, and acceleration with regard to engines should be a little more, take more effort than this. So that's something that Microsoft and Asobo have yet to fix. Let's take a look outside real quick. See what she looks like here. $18 knots already, and again the engines are idle. We're in a good enough spot. We're going to go ahead and check our thrust reverse. And this is what it looks like outside. And go ahead and stow it. And yep, they both work. So we can, while we're taxiing out, tap on the brakes just a little bit. Those things are done. And we'll do our takeoff checklist here just in a moment. Nobody is behind us. This is why this airplane usually has 2 people in the flight deck, not just 1. Okay. If I remember correctly, the the mountain that oh no, I'm sorry. We're gonna be looking at it as soon as we turn around. I haven't lived there in a long time. All right, let's go through the checklist before takeoff here real quick. Flaps set for takeoff. All means zoom in for those of you watching on your phone, mobile device. Flaps, speed brakes, trim, that is set. The ice detection system in this aircraft actually there's a BIT built-in test, and then once we began a taxi, it actually ran the test, and it passed. V-speeds, yep, they're there. Speed knobs, set that to FMS. That's what it wants us to do, because it wants to climb out at 160 knots, and we'll let it do that. As soon as we get underway, we'll set nav on as well. As soon as we get underway, we will change it from 160 to 240, and we'll utilize our flight level change mode so that we climb at 240 knots, which gives us an optimum. I mean a real optimum climb. Not only is it an optimum climb, it's a good preventative measure so you don't overspeed while you are under 10,000 feet. All right. Crew briefing. We're gonna pretend that we did that. The way that would work, in case you do want to know. All right, here's how this would work. I'm the pilot flying. You on the right seat. You are in this flight. You are the pilot monitoring and or the PNF. Pilot not flying. Let's say PM. Pilot monitoring. Therefore, if we incur a problem prior to V1, we will. I will close. I'll bring the throttles idle. We'll come to a stand to stop on the runway. You notify ATC, the tower, tell them that we're troubleshooting something, we got a problem, and that we need to vacate the runway if we can. If something happens after V1, we will have to, that means we are committed to takeoff. V stands for velocity, by the way. When we're at V1, we'll take the problem with us into the air, and we will troubleshoot and work it out while we are in the air. And we'll simply go from there, taking off to the south as we are. There are some vertical obstacles such as Camelback Mountain. So we're also going to be keeping an eye out for terrain issues as well. And since this is a very busy area with Deer Valley to the west of us, Phoenix Sky Harbor International to the south, we're going to be flying directly over Luke Air Force Base as well as Goodyear. Um, we're simply looking out for any Gen Av traffic as well as military traffic, since they operate sometimes on a totally different frequency. And that's what this particular crew briefing would be, but I did that for those of you watching. Radar, meaning weather radar, as required. There isn't a cloud in sight. Not required. Static, that is all on. Flight controls, free and correct, we already know that. Eyes protection is as required. X-ray lights. Landing lights and anti-collision lights. Don't need tail lights, don't need the wing lights on, just those lights alone are fine. And our instrument system, cooler system, check. Checklist is finished, and take off. Alright. Let's just go ahead and turn on that, which that is our auto throttle. And on the FMA, which is on the top of the PFD, you now see in white where it says TO in the upper left corner of the FMA flight mode annunciator. At least that's what we call it on the 7-4 and the 777. TO roll and okay, the FMS is in standby and our altitude selection is also in standby. Okay, good. Alright, we're simply walking you through what you're going to do. Yeah, we do understand all that. Elevator control, rotate, yeah, we do know that. And those are all things that we know how to do. And we'll just leave that up. Alright, let's roll. And like I said, with this page, I always like to add a flight plan directly on my page, on my side of the flight deck, in case we have to do something. Alright, so let's go. Tilt our head up a little bit. And again, I would love to use my Tobii Eye Tracker 5. Wonderful piece of technology, but for some reason it's still not working well with Microsoft Flight Sim 2024. We are shooting for a 90-minute flight. And start the clock. Here comes V1. Rotate. Okay, Camelback Mountain to the left. If pause rig, you're up. Yeah, I know, that's the parking brake indicator. Alright. We are go for the autopilot. Let's see if it handles things correctly. Gonna bring those flaps up, all the way up. .200 knots. Okay, we're not climbing, so let's do this. Manual. Let's say 230 to play safe. Flight level change, so it's gonna pitch for that speed. In the climb. And again, it's a wonderful tool because it does a couple things. Like I said before, it prevents you from overspeeding when you're while under 10,000, while below 10,000 feet. And if you have air traffic and they're asking you to slow down, whether you're in a climb or in a descent, another great application for those types of scenarios. Hey, here comes 7,005. 8,000. Let's take a look outside real quick. I'll take a look at the greater Phoenix Valley. There's Scottsdale off our tail. Camelback Mountain there, kind of off our left wingtip right there. There's Sky Harbor International. You can't really see it, but it's to our 9 o'clock there. There's the McDowell Mountain Range. There's Deer Valley to our 3 o'clock. Now, Luke Air Force Base, that should be really easy to spot because it's two very long parallel runways. Looking for that. There we go. There it is. Luke Air Force Base. It's right. I'm going to use the nose of the airplane. Look on the nose of the airplane. It's right there. Right off the nose. That's Luke Air Force Base. When I lived there 20 years ago, that was F-16 City. That's where they did F-16 training. And now that's where they're training some F-16s, but also the F-35s. Alright. Back inside, because we've got some other things to check. Let's go ahead and turn off our landing lights, because we're well above 10. Oh, we're also above 18, so our barrels are going to go to standard. 29.92. Cross-check that with the FO. Good. And we're going to turn off landing lights. Before we do that, let's go ahead and tell it to climb at the what is programmed in the FMS. I did not plug in the vertical profile for this, the ISO 8 departure. I know I said I was going to, but when you have no traffic, no ATC, but I will do it the next time I fly this aircraft. Technically, however, just a little technicality, those values should already be in the flight computer. If you watch my videos on Boeing aircraft, and I think I did one about the Airbus, when you select a SID or a star, uh, the vertical profile is linked to every navigational fix in that departure and or um, standard terminal arrival. All right, making sure we've got the lights off. The only lights you need on are the navigation lights, beacon lights, and the anti-collision lights. Those little white lights, that flash very, very bright off the tips of the wings. That's what that button is for right there. All right. I would love to utilize the HUD, but as you can see, the HUD does not work. And just as in the 787 and Microsoft Flight Sim 2024, the HUD barely works. All right, let's finish up the after takeoff and climb checklist. Landing gear up, yes. Flaps, those are up. Throttles climb, yep. Ice protection as required. Pressurization, we are pressurizing, and I was watching that as we were climbing out of Scottsdale. It was already beginning to pressurize. Seatbelt sign as required for, seatbelts for those of us in the flight deck. Altimeters, they're already set because we're well above 18,000, and I already programmed to set them to standard. Exterior lights, as we just went over that. APU knob off, and it also aspire to climb above flight level 350 because that is the maximum altitude at which the APU can properly function because the air gets so thin at flight level 350 and above. It's already very, very thin right now anyway. We're passing 31. It's very, very thin. As soon as we get up to the cruise, we'll go through the cruise checklist. And we will be officially on our way to a much more habitable geographic locale. Weather will be beautiful. I mean, in the mid 50s, I think I said 54 degrees in Monterey Bay. Doesn't get any better than that. Even in the middle of summer, it can be 100 degrees 20 minutes out of Monterey to the east of Monterey in the summer. And as soon as you roll into Monterey Bay itself, it can be very nice, foggy, and in the upper 50s, low 60s. And as I said, the previous aircraft in the real world to do this was Citation, technically a Citation 560, and they did it at 38,000. So that's good enough for me. As soon as we go through the checklist here, I'm gonna go into the tools page on the flight computer, and also known as the Garmin GTC. Go into that, and we're gonna look at, and what we're going to do, we're going to look at the fuel performance and check and see if, just like if it's in the Boeing, like in Boeing aircraft, I can type in a specific speed and altitude and ask it, all right, if we do go out to that altitude, if we do go out to a certain speed, what is that going to do to our on-timed performance? What is it going to do to our fuel? And it also calculates the optimum cruise, and alright, now that we're level, it wants to cruise at Mach 0.4, which is great, but the one problem with that, let me zoom in. We have that white and red barber pole, which is our overspeed. Just a little too close to that, because if we hit one little pocket of turbulence, technically not a pocket, because if it was a pocket, then that would mean there would be an absence of air, which there isn't, but just a little too close for comfort. So we're going to back off, and we're going to say Mach 0.83. There we go. It's slowly picking up. What I mean to say is it's slowly getting with the program. There we go. Looks like it's going to be stabilizing. Alright. Throttles as desired, yes they are. Autopilot is good. If RVS emitters basically have reduced virtuals, yep. Same thing with altimeter. Cross check within 200. Are they both at 38,000? They are. As is the speed is. Yep, everything is cross-checked identical. Very good. And we're ready for our descent checklist. Alright. And that is how you bring a citation latitude takeoff to climb. Now this altitude, we should be contrailing. Let's see if we are. Let's come out of here just a bit. It's also looking like a very, very smooth flight. So let's go ahead and turn off the seatbelt sign. And then we'll come back in and I'll show you that one synoptic, if it does, if it's modeled in Microsoft 2024. Here we go. Yep, contrailing right along. What I will say is I would love to take this aircraft transatlantic. Oh, I don't know what's going on with the textures on the engines. That's not right. That's a glitch that they're still working on. I take it. I would love to take it across the Atlantic, for example. And I was actually going to be doing that instead of this type of flight. But you cannot plug in the the latitude and longitude. You cannot put those in. I'm sorry, the latitude longitude coordinates for crossing the ocean. In other words, when you cross the Atlantic, as an example, you have NAT, N-A-T, which stands for North Atlantic Tracks. And when you're on one of those tracks over the ocean, you have certain waypoints, and each waypoint is not a name. Each waypoint is simply set up numbers, and so like 46 degrees north by 50 degrees west, so on and so forth. You cannot plug those in to the Garmin G5000 the way Microsoft and or Asobo has designed it. I already sent a report of that into Microsoft support, and they did respond, and they acted like no one had ever reported that before, which I find to be odd, but they didn't. Yeah, there's a bit of an issue with their server because Citation Longitude doesn't look right unless I zoom in. There we go, now you can see it. Yeah, it has some texture issues, so definitely a server problem on Microsoft's end. We should be able to see the Palo Verde plant in our background, but it's not there. Huh. Interesting. Should be. There we go. That's a nice view. Alright. Right turn. We're going more and more to the north with every turn that we make, which is good. Alright. Let's see if what I want. To take out data, landing data, we don't need that. Speed bugs, no. Weight and fuel, no. Flat speeds, nope. Although that is very interesting. It's not there. Let's look under utilities. That is where Garmin used to have it. Under the trip planning, it does not function here. Okay. Huh. Interesting. Well, what I was going to show you is the flight optimization tool. What you do is you type in your current what you do is you type in the altitude that you would like to know about, and then you say, well, I want to know what kind of fuel economy am I going to get at XYZ altitude. Same thing with speed, and then it gives you a calculation as to what the optimum speed and what the optimum altitude would be based on your gross weight, as well as the wind component outside. Which in this case, we've got, if we look on our bottom left of the PFD, we have a ground next to our trigger speed and ground speed, which tells me if our ground speed is slower than trigger speed, that tells me we have a headwind. Headwind of 58 knots right off the nose, and a crosswind off the left, hitting the left side of the airplane of 38 knots. Alright. Let's look at pause. No, I'm just looking real quick to see if they put it into a spot where they should not have done it. Airport, no. I do not believe they have it active. Like I said, it should be under utilities and trip planning. Yep, it's just it doesn't it's grayed out, which means that, yeah, it doesn't work. Alright, well, that's the way it goes. Traffic. So let's bring up weather. That's a way to zoom out on that one. Zoom in, rather. And this would be the satellite weather. Not the next rad, which is on board the aircraft. This would be the weather data that we would be getting via satellite. If I'm not mistaken, the delay is something like I believe the delay is sometimes 15 minutes, and then you get a new picture of what's going on. But it's a very, very, very nice tool to have. All right. So we have been in the air for 22 minutes, which means we've got about 78 minutes. 78 minutes remaining. All right. Let's zoom out on our map. As you can see in the upper left corner of the map, you can already see the Pacific Ocean. So even though we have a headwind of 58 knots or so, it's getting a little bumpy. Let's go ahead and turn the fasten seatbelt sign back on. I looked at the wind data before going live here, and the wind data showed a very smooth flight. But that would not even be considered moderate turbulence. That would be considered light. So looks like it'll smooth out a little bit. As soon as we make that turn up at Okako, Oscar Kilo Alpha Charlie Oscar, which is only 13 minutes out, we'll begin to have more of a crosswind and less of a headwind, so that'll help us with our performance. The one thing you do always want to keep in mind, and it just hit me, because I'm explaining a lot of different things, even though you're in navigation mode in this case, technically we're in LNAV mode, it simply isn't titled that up here on the autopilot panel. You always want to turn the heading bug to whatever heading you are currently facing. In this case, 269. If something were to go wrong, either with the autopilot's lateral navigation or something else, the heading would always be ready, so that you could simply touch the heading button right there, and then it would maintain at a minimum if everything else was working within the autopilot. What it would do is it would catch the would catch the current heading, and then what that would do is it would give you time to look at the problem that you're having, contact ATC, tell them what's going on, and then because what are they going to do? They are going to vector you. They're going to give you they're going to give you radar vectors, and they're going to tell you what heading to go to. They're not going to give you more than likely. They're not going to give you, especially if you're below 25,000. They're going to give you, especially if you're going to be landing at another airport. They're going to be giving you radar vectors. So in other words, they're going to be giving you headings such as Citation, in this case, 35463 Charlie Lima, turn right heading 330, and then they're going to tell you to go left 240, so on and so forth. And they do that for a good reason. It keeps it simple on your end, so that they're not giving you a bunch of navigational fixes and you're having to type that into the flight computer. No. It's very, very straightforward. If you're in the middle of a situation like that, to simply have them give you, and they know, and most air traffic controllers, they know this. They're gonna give you a very specific heading, and yeah, it's so. Anyway, that being said, that's why you always want to make sure that the heading bug on the autopilot is set to whatever your present heading is. There is one thing I'd like to point out. We talked about it in one of the checklists, and that is this. And I only raise this because in the real world it happened a couple of years ago. I believe it was in 2023. It was a citation. I don't remember where it was coming from. I want to say somewhere in the Midwest, Indiana or Ohio, maybe Illinois. But what was happening was the flight crew, especially as they were going through 10,000 feet, they and then 12,500, which is technically the big one. They were looking at their instruments, but the one thing that they were not looking at, the cabin pressurization system. And the aircraft simply continued to climb because that's how they programmed the autopilot. The cabin was not pressurizing correctly, and everybody basically fell asleep. And the result of that mistake was not good, not good at all. All right, let's go over something that if we were utilizing air traffic control, they would be giving us a transponder code. Now, this is set. Well, the code would simply be like this. You simply type in the code, and it'd be something like 3413, enter. But you add different modes. With this aircraft, given that it's running the Garmin G5000, the transponder TCAS mode is always in the auto position, but if for some odd reason, if they were to contact us and say, we still don't have you on our scope, then you could do this. Altitude reporting. With that mode, they would know exactly where you are, but more importantly, they would know what altitude you were at. By leaving in auto mode, it is transmitting, and therefore the ATC, they know not only the direction of flight and the altitude, but they know exactly where we are to within a pinpoint on the map. So I just wanted to run that by you. And obviously, very, very obviously, we would be dealing with various communication with regard to radios. So they give you a frequency, let's say a citation. What's our tail number? Just use the last 3 digits. Citation 463 Charlie Lima. Contact Los Angeles Center on 121.825. All you need to do is type in the 2. It automatically fills in the I for you. And there you go. In some other, technically, in this, with the Garmin G5000 up here, if you look in the upper right corner of the PFD, under COM1, what you have is, it would tell you who you're talking to, which is a very, very nice feature. So it would tell you LA Center, or it tells you like what we're going to be doing, Oakland Center, or Oakland, or I should say NorCal, NORCAL, NorCal approach. It would give you NORCAL APP. So it tells you who you're talking to, which is a very, very nice feature. And it's my understanding that they're working on auto communication frequency hopping, meaning as soon as they tell you what your next once they tell you what the frequency you need to switch to, and they give you that, the Garmin unit will pick that up and automatically do a frequency switch to that next controller that you have been assigned to talk to. Given that, let's see here. What airports are we looking at? We are looking at, oh cool. We're going to be flying right over, well, not directly over, but in between Palmdale and Edwards Air Force Base. Very, very cool. Very cool. We'll be there in no time. It'll be very interesting to see if they modeled the really, really long runway at Edwards. I think it's like 15,000 feet, along with the so-called dry lake bed runways as well, that the space shuttle used to land on. Or for those of you that are real aviation geeks, such as yours truly, where they would also land aircraft. You could land, or you could also utilize the word recovery. Recover aircraft such as the X-15 after it goes Mach back in the late 50s, early 60s, going over Mach 6. Let's see what it looks like outside here. It's a whole lot of desert, but at this time of the day, with the sun being where it is, it's a beautiful view, no doubt about it. Yeah, those texture issues are something that Microsoft definitely needs to, or maybe it's just Asobo. They definitely need to address those issues because my settings I do believe are turned all the way up. So anyway, let's look down. What do we have? Kind of what does the desert look like? Look like from flight level 380. If I were flying online, like I said, the next time I'll definitely try to do that. We would obviously be up somewhere around flight level 420 or possibly 440. Alright, here comes that next turn that we were talking about. Alright. Looking another positive thing about flying a 38, and again, I don't know how much that overspeed barber pole would come down on the speed 8 ponchon, which is on the left side of the PFD. But basically, what happens is this: it comes down to a very basic mathematical equation. Well, you got how do I explain it? Okay, your altitude versus your gross weight. So the higher you go, then the flight computer says, all right, the lighter you're getting. So the lighter you're getting, meaning you're burning off fuel, then the aircraft becomes light enough to go up another 1,000 or 2,000 feet. As you do that, however, that as you climb that additional 1,000 and or 2,000 feet, the air simply begins to become very, very thin. I'm sorry, the air begins to get thinner and thinner. So flying faster, there's it wants you to stay slower because it doesn't. It's simply a fail safe that's built in. I do know that that does sound a bit counterintuitive because you would think, hey, wait a minute. If the higher I am, the thinner the atmosphere gets. Well, why isn't it such that I need to fly faster? For example, the SR-71, the the airspeed was not measured in indicated airspeed. Did you know that? A lot of people don't. They always wonder. I wonder what the indicated airspeed was if it's 70 plus thousand feet. That is because the SR-71 was not measuring its speed in indicated airspeed. Like any other jet at this altitude and above, you measure it in Mach, not knots indicated airspeed. But if they did have to read that number in the SR-71, they used keys, KEAS, which stands for knots equivalent airspeed. So it would give you your airspeed in knots, but knots equivalent, meaning based on your altitude and your speed speed, it would compute a number and it would give you your keys. KEAS, as in Kilo Echo Alpha Sierra, keys, knots equivalent airspeed. But a significant amount of airliners, they don't do that. The majority of airliners, unless we're talking about like a 787 or possibly like an A350, the maximum ceiling is 41,000, at least in 737s and 47s and 57s and 67s, 777s. You never hear of one, to the best of my knowledge. You never hear of one going north of 41,000 feet. The airplane is simply too heavy to go up into that upper regime. However, the 777-300ER, let's just go aside while I tell you about that airplane. And I'm waiting for a PMDG to release that for 2024. The 777-300ER, a lot of airline pilots that fly it, they're obviously cross-rated in the 777-200ER, and quite possibly if their airline has a 200LR, they would be rated, or more than likely they would be type rated in that aircraft as well. The one thing that they don't like about the 777-300ER is its maximum crew ceiling when they have a full load of passengers on board. Why is that? The wing, if you look and I go to a 777-3, again the 300ER, the wing is if you look at a comparison of the wing to the size of the fuselage, not this airplane, but the 777-300ER. Well, let me put it in words that aren't, let me rephrase. The wing area, and you could do it in square foot, or you could look at square meters. The wing area on 777-300ER is pretty small in comparison to the area that is the fuselage. It's very small. Therefore, while other aircraft, other wide bodies, 747s, 777-200LR, A350, A330, they can get up into the upper 30s to avoid turbulence and weather and that kind of thing, while the 777-300ER cannot. That's why if you ever fly one, you'll notice on your tablet or the the in-flight entertainment screen in front of you when you travel on Air Canada, as an example, or American Airlines. You'll notice that even on a longer flight, you never really, on average, get anywhere north of 33 or 34,000 feet. You stay down in the low 30s. So, just a little side thing. And look at what we have here. Off the right wing, we have Edwards Air Force Base. There it is. Formerly known as Muroc, before they named it Edwards. And if you look close, if you look real close, you've got a pretty good size dry lake bed there. And let's just see real quick. Let me see here. When was Edwards? $949. Yeah, that's right. All right, so Captain Glenn Edwards was flying a YB-49 flying wing, which was designed by. Now the rest of this is from the top of my head when Jack Northrop was test flying the flying wing in 1949, way ahead of his time. The pilot crashed the YB-49 there in December of 49, and they changed it from, as I said a couple minutes ago, Muroc, M-U-R-O-C, Muroc, over to, and then they decided to name it after that gentleman who flew the YB-49, Edwards. But, yeah, there's Edwards, and if you look close enough, I'm going to use the right wing tip to be my pointer. You can see those dry lake bed runways that the space shuttle used to utilize, as well as the X-15 way back. And yeah, so very, very cool. Edwards Air Force Base. Yeah, let's check on where we are. Oh yeah, Palmdale. Another interesting place. And there it is off our left wing. There's Palmdale. But yeah, Air Force, I'm sorry. Edwards Air Force Base, home of the Air Force Test Pilot School. There we go. Looking good. Looking very, very good. All right, only 3 minutes to our next turn, and we will be experiencing even less of a headwind. I mean, we're still going to have a headwind all the way up to Monterey Bay, but it will begin to get less and less and less. Let's go ahead and get that. heading bug lined up with our current 373. Very good. Just looking at everything, and everything looks good. Looking very, very good. One minute. Basically 1 minute to our next turn. The one thing that is really nice about the ability to utilize what are known as the utility system here on the right. The nice thing about that is this. You can tell it what altitude you want to be at and what speed you want to be at, and it automatically gives you a very, very specific necessitated rate of descent as well as airspeed in order to hit that mark. So if we look up here, let's get the weather from Monterey, because we need to make a decision, and that decision is what runway is it going to be. I think I have a pretty good idea. The winds are almost always off the Pacific Ocean. But let's look at the weather here. Alright, let's see if it's changed since we left Scottsdale. Wind 2676. Alright, 267. So we're obviously going to be utilizing to a left, landing into the wind. Frequencies for 28 left. Okay, that's not it. Procedures though, ILS 10 right. The reason you definitely, one big reason you definitely do want to have an ILS going into Monterey is because if you've been there any time at all, you'd be amazed at how quickly fog can roll in, or I should say build up, and just come in from the ocean. And you can have it can be unbelievably foggy, and 25 minutes later, it's like Alaska if you're like in the Homer area on the Kenai Peninsula. You can be totally socked in, and then in just 15 minutes, poof, you've got blue skies. So that's why you have an ILS. And the reason why if I had to guess, the reason why the ILS is only for 10 right and not for its reciprocal, which would be 28 left, that would be, if I had to guess, that would be due to the fact that um, the there is some terrain, a little bit of terrain involved um, when you're coming in to a left and or to a right. There is a little bit of a quasi mountain, if you will, that is directly on that side of it. Let's just leave this up on weather. Oh, this is what I was going to show you. I'm sorry. I said weather uplink. I was looking at the wrong button. Weather radar. That is the onboard weather radar. And currently it's off, so turn it on. You go like that. You just say turn radar on. It's a standby because it's booting up, for lack of a better term. But while that's booting up, if you think of it, our speed, we're making some pretty good time. I mean, if we were flying against a 737, like out of Southwest Airlines, for example, out of Phoenix, or an American Airlines 737, or an American A320 or 321 or 319, we would be beating them because those airplanes, they don't go any faster than 0.81 Mach number, and we are at 0.82. We're supposed to be, well, we're supposed to be at 0.83, but 0.826 now. There we go. It's slowly playing catch up there. The radar should be up and running by now. Oh, sorry. Here you go. That is how you would turn on the onboard radar, and then you can simply control the gain and the tilt. Although I take that back, they do not have that modeled in the sim. The gain is not, which is very, very important, because if you have too much gain, you're looking at it's going to be picking up way too much moisture, and the return isn't going to be as accurate. On the other side of that, if your gain is too little, you're not going to be picking up enough moisture. What else? Let's see. Weather watch, that doesn't work. Weather alert, that doesn't work. Stabilizer, that doesn't. When I say doesn't work, I'm meaning they did not include this in the sim. The stabilizer is not simulated, and the altitude tilt, which is very important, especially if you're looking at a thunderhead, meaning a big cumulonimbus cloud. You kind of do want to know what is the shelf. In other words, the top part of that thunderhead. I want to know what that is. That is what you would use it for. Bearing line, it does simulate that. And what that just does is that just tells you, all right, this is where you are currently headed. So if you are playing a little game known as Dodge the Thunderstorms, especially this time of the year, especially down south, in the southern part of the country, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, good night. The amount of thunderstorms that Florida can have is just unreal. But yeah, that is what you would like to have. And if you are going to Florida, and there's all kinds of thunderstorms along the coast, and are like roughly 10 nautical miles off the coast, because of that unique relationship between land and ocean. Um, what you do if ATC will give it to you, uh, what you can do is you can go down the coast and you can tilt your weather radar toward the shoreline of Florida. So if you're going down, you're going past what is that? Not Tampa on the Atlantic side rather. West Palm Beach on down to Opelika and Fort Lauderdale, Opelika, Miami. You can be looking off to the side with the radar, especially at night. Very, 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 very helpful in doing that. So you tilt it in that direction, or I should say you tilt the bearing in that direction, and you can get a very, very accurate readout of that. Anyway, radar back to the off mode, and this is what this is what you this is what you get. Is this all they give you? Track up, north up. That can be helpful. It's mainly your preference, or sync it to the nav map. That's really the ultimate way to go with that. Wrong way. Yeah, we'll leave it like that. Sync it to the nav map. But I mean, there's no weather to really track because it's. Let's go back outside. Now that you're learning, hopefully, those of you wanting to fly this aircraft, you're beginning to pick up more and more things about it. Let's see here. Let's look at the Pacific Ocean. Yeah, there's some ocean effect clouds to after our 9 o'clock, and very good. Very good meaning clear as it could possibly be. Yeah, there is some, there's obviously a lot of haze going on just below us, but it almost does not get any better than that right there. That is what you would call your Chamber of Commerce photograph right there. Yep. All right, let's begin to look at the arrival. Believe it or not, we are already at that time. Let's go ahead and dial this down to about 5,000. And we'll begin our descent here in just a moment. We need to cross. We don't have a EFB on us here. Alright, let's do this. Requested for avionics. Let's look at our weather. At 2998. Alright, let's go ahead and get that pre-selected. 2998. There it is. We won't do that to the standby ADI yet. And 270, like I said, we're going to be utilizing, making sure that the weather syncs up with what we're looking at there. And it does. Alright, let's look at our procedures for going into Monterey. The approach is not going to be 10 right now with the wind out of the west like that. Is it gusting? I'm just reading a meter. I'm not looking at the summary. 270 at 10. It doesn't say that's gusting, but that's good enough. It's 10 or greater, so we can't play around with variable winds, and therefore we can land in any direction we want. We're going to stick with 28 left, 28 left, vectors. Actually, wiggle is already on our plan. Load that. And there it is. And we've got our, that's nice, it actually loaded our vertical profile. Perfect. Something tells me it did not. Yeah, it's in there twice. Yeah, that's regrettable. Alright, I see what happened. Instead of inserting a procedure directly into Monterey, yeah, let me see if I can fix this. Runaways to the left. Let's do this. Yeah, that's, it should not have loaded that way. It should have loaded directly from the airport itself. It did not do that. We're going to proceed to direct wiggle as we already are. However, we're not going to go to wiggle as this one here. So we need to get rid of all this in the top. So here's what we do. We go hit wiggle. Whiskey India Golf Golf Lima. We hit the direct 2 button on that. Waypoint. Yep. We're not going into a holding pattern. We're just double checking course 292. Yeah, roughly it is 292 from us right at the moment. Activate direct wiggle. And after that, so let's go ahead and zoom in a bit. Too much of a zoom on that. Let's zoom out there just a bit. Alright, let's move all this over. VNAV goes on. It should begin to descend automatic. I was going to say automatically. Automatically. Overspeed, that's not good. Alright, back to manual. Okay. It doesn't want to do it. Don't know why. So we're going to get rid of the VNAV. We're going to go vertical speed. We're going to bring ourselves way back on the speed to 240, and we're going to begin descending. Let's begin descending at roughly 2,000 a minute. See where that puts us. Let's bring up our checklist. Precision landing, verify landing elevation. Yep, done that. APU, well, not yet. We're too high for that. We'll turn the APU on once we get on the ground. Altimeters, they're set for the transition once we get to 18,000. Exterior lights, as required. Let's go ahead and look at our V-speeds. I like to do it over here. So on the left side, go V-speeds for the landing. All on. So our approach speed is 137. Our reference speed is going to be 125, and I like to do VREF plus 5, so that'll be 130 when I begin to, because obviously this airplane does not have auto land. Let's see, we're going to hit wiggle it. We're not going to be getting even close to that, are we? Okay, we can go through the checklist, and we can do a type of a holding pattern or a quick loop off of a certain fix in order to get us down to where we need to be. Landing done calculated, we did that already. Ice protection as required, yep. Let's do one last thing here. Let's do take off runway. It doesn't get that doesn't give us what we need. Alright. It already knows what we're gonna do, which is fine. Alright. Good. Ice protection as required. Flight instruments, avionics, FMS, that's what we're talking about. Minimums for this runway are, see if we can bring that up. Let's go into our charts here. Oh, I see what it's doing. Why is it giving us... Okay. Yeah. To wait left. Now all of a sudden, it's... Wait a minute here. This is saying ILS. Okay. So we go here. Let's look at... what are the minimums supposed to be? Yeah, we're not going to make it, unfortunately. Because we've only been in the air for just over 1 hour. We got here really fast. Okay. That's alright. We can fix we can fix the problem, not a problem. What are our minimum? It should give us the minimums right at the top. This type of chart doesn't do that. That's disappointing. It does not give us that information at all. 364, 3000, okay, no. That's where I'm going missed. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make an executive decision. Minimums. Radio. 300. Go. There we go. Minimum set. Yeah, I know we're gonna have to turn around and get lower. So we're gonna go out over the ocean, come back in, we're gonna come in, we're gonna come back to the SNS VOR, and we're simply gonna shoot it from that direction. No big deal. Minimums. Altimeters are complete crew briefing, passenger briefing. Well, you know, we didn't do, welcome to corporate aviation. Little secret, making sure that's on. Alright, we're gonna go ahead and turn on these lights as well. The reason that didn't come on is because the landing gear is up. We will turn on the pulse lights and the recoil lights. Alright, check. Cabin doors, so yep, those are on. That's gonna happen before landing, and that's where we're at. Alright, we're basically flying over the airport, so here's what we're gonna do. We are gonna go into heading mode. It should not have done that. Alright. So let's check where we are. Alright. And yes, the mistake was mine. My apologies. It's amazing to see that we've only been in the air for just over 1 hour and we're already here. I mean, the CRJs that come out of Phoenix, Sky Harbor, was the very first time I actually flew out of Monterey Bay as a teenager 30 years ago or so. Was on a CRJ 700 on America West. And it was a solid, with the tailwind, it was a solid 2 hours and 15 minutes, if I remember correctly. Alright. Gonna do about another 20 degrees to the right. Let's make it 25 degrees to the right, so we're more parallel with the runway. Zoom in with zoom in a bit. As soon as we get below 18,000, we will we'll change our barometric setting on the altimeters over to 29.99 right about now. There we go. Make sure it's over on the FOs as well, which it is. And we'll simply make this 2999 on the backup. The standby, that is. Okay, we're not. Now that we're getting into air that is thicker because we're descending, now if you notice our indicator airspeed from 240 knots is slowly beginning to creep up just a little bit, even though it's only 1 knot. It's beginning to do that because the atmosphere is getting more and more dense. Hopefully the engines are idling. They're not. They should be. They should be a complete idle. They should be, in other words, the white line that you see on the throttle itself, that should be lined up with the white line that is on the console. Couldn't think of the word there for a second. Alright, let's go direct to, yeah, we're still a little too high for this. Let's look at our lights again real quick. Everybody's on, everything is on that needs to be on. Alright. Here we go. Direct. Let's do this. Let's set up. Let's set up. Just thinking quietly to myself. 240. It's too slow. Too fast, rather. 200. That should bring the engines all the way back. Yes, okay. Let's go ahead and fly direct here in just a moment. And what we'll do is we will increase our vertical speed once we go direct to Wixon. Nav mode armed. Wixon. Direct. Yep, do it. There we go. And we're going to tell it to go even faster than that. And we're going to deploy the speed brakes to keep us slow. Very, very effective speed brakes. Does a very good job. Let's look at what the ocean looks like here in the evening. Beautiful view. Okay, what's the deal? I heard a little chime go off in my headset. Probably for the speed brakes being open. Alright, 4,000 is where we need to be. Alright, 4,000 it is. Coming in too fast. Alright, 2,000 feet a minute. Let's see if that makes any difference whatsoever. Shouldn't. We might as well go ahead and set it for 3,000 feet here in just a moment, although we don't want to run into the mountains here. You can barely see anything. Let's level off at this altitude right here, right now. That's a little too close for comfort, but that is what's on the map. This is where synthetic vision comes into play. Too close for comfort for my taste. Let's have a look.
Terrain, terrain, terrain,
Pull
terrain.
up, pull up.
So now it doesn't
Pull
like it.
up.
Alright, here's what we're gonna do.
Autopilot.
The other thing to keep in mind is
Terrain.
the terrain that
Terrain.
exists on the just outside of the threshold of runway 28 left.
Pull
That's the
up.
one thing it's not taking into consideration.
Pull up. Pull up.
We're doing fine. We're just fine. We
Terrain.
should be in the
Terrain.
clear.
Terrain,
It's a little
Terrain.
oversensitive.
terrain, terrain.
Alright. Approach. Nav mode. Go. Change this to localizer 1. Let's slow the jet down. $3,000 is what we need to do next. And I cannot see the road. I can barely see the lights because of the sun. Barely see it. And I mean barely. Okay, flaps 1 please. Gear down. Make sure the parking brake doesn't come on. Of course it does every time. Speed brakes, they automatically arm themselves. Auto on the power reserve, meaning the thrust reverse will automatically kick in. RV speeds, real quick, refresh my memory, 125, okay, 130 on the speed. Flaps 2. And I'm going to take over.
Autopilot.
Also taking over the throttles as well.
Auto throttle.
Alright. Here we go. And it was not bringing us in lined up with the runway either. If you look at the VFD, you can clearly see it. Full flaps, and we're going to bring those engines way back. Now this is where the HUD would come in handy, but that's alright. Coming in as slow as I possibly can because of the terrain, terrain below us. This is when the terrain, the E-Jeep was in the ground proximity warning system. This is when it should be going off right here as well. But the synthetic vision does not agree with what I am seeing with my own two eyeballs, which is a little bizarre. It should be showing me 2 runways, not just 1. To a left is the runway to the left. Come back on the throttle a bit.
$500.
Check.
Sync rate. Sync rate. Sync
Minimums.
rate. Sync rate.
Landing.
200.
Sync rate.
Pull up. Pull up. Pull up. Pull 50, up. 40, 30, 20, 10.
Alright. Well, welcome to Monterey Bay. As soon as we vacate the runway here, we'll stop over on the taxiway briefly. Get the APU up and get the APU going. And get our exterior lights in the proper configuration. And yeah, we did everything on that checklist. A little busy mitigating the Jeep Whiz. Alright, I should say negotiating with the Jeep Whiz. And turn off the lights. We should begin to roll automatically. We're not rolling. Wonder why. See, pardon me. I do not know where it would like for us to park, so we're just going to follow the yellow brick road, so to speak. That's fine. Okay, let's go through the checklist real quick. All those things are done. landing, all those things were also done. Yeah, the checklist is not intuitive, and it needs to be, because we don't need a go around procedure. Alright. Yeah, it's the engine's idle, and it makes us overspeed on the ground here. So. Some of those taxi lights are located where they should not be, but that's alright. And let's go outside for this one. Boy, they want us to park there. We're a little big for that, but alright, let's do it. And no, the nose gear would not make a streak on the on the pavement like that. He's walking through the wing. I guess he's walking through the wing. Walking through the wing. Just go in a little bit more. Get out of the way. We are a little big for this spot. Parking brakes are set. And we are good to go. Turning off both engines. And there we go. Let's go ahead and turn off the taxi lights. Obviously, the seatbelt signs. And the emergency lights are no longer need to be armed. We're going to go ahead and turn off our let's go through the checklist one more time. The shutdown checklist, which is basically just a few switches. Okay, go around. I really don't know why that checklist exists. If you're not going to do one, because we did not do a go around, we were simply too high and we simply went around. There's a big difference. After landing, thrust reverse those flaps are as ice protection and everything's good there. Exterior lights as required. Shutdown. Throttles are idle. Emergency brakes set. Engine good. Seatbelt signs off. Emergency lights off. Standby power switch off. APU knob off. Exterior lights. Okay, we'll get to that in just a minute. Quick turn, and we'll leave it like that in case we were going to do a quick turn. I did promise I would show you how the door works on the outside in case the door was closed. I'm sorry, in case you needed to close the door. So let's do that real quick. Very quickly, let's do that. And then we'll be done with this. We'll be done with this section of flight. And if you would like to see more of this aircraft, let me know, and in the next one we'll take this aircraft from Monterey to somewhere else that is even more interesting. Alright, so if you want to know, let's go see if we can place a ox here. There we go. If, let's say, oh, look how dirty we got. It's a dirty airplane. Wow, it needs a good cleaning. If you want to close the door, here's where you go to do that. You open this door lift bay. Let me get the body of the pilot here lined up a little better. There we go. You open this little latch. Door lift. The green button. Move it up. Hold it. It's not spring. There we go. And that's how you lock it. That little white light turns on, meaning check the door handle. The light goes a little more dim, and now that's how you walk away from the jet. Pretty simple. And then now to open it, well, you just simply pull that latch, and you let gravity do the work. And right there on the inside, just on top of just to the right, the very top step is our certificate of airworthiness, right there from the FAA. Well, there we are. Hope you enjoyed the flight. My apologies for not descending as soon as I should have, but I didn't realize we could make it in only 1 hour and 11 minutes to the approach point. That was not intended. Alright, because the headwind was not affecting us as much as it should have. That's why we were able to fly so fast with the engines not kicking out as much thrust. So that's what happened. And but at any rate, welcome to Monterey Bay. And what I'd like to do is for any of you watching, I'd like for you to tell me from Monterey Bay what type of aircraft you'd like to see next. I'll go through it step by step, just like I did with this one, and the destination. So you all let me know, and I'll look forward to reading your comments like I always do. I hope you got something out of the video. I hope it was fun at the same time. At least I try my best to make it fun at the same time. And hope and we'll see you very soon. And until then, fly safe.